Welcome to this edition of Let's Talk Winnipeg, a very special edition today. We have what I consider one of the strong leaders in Winnipeg joining us today, who is also a friend and colleague in many ways, and I'm very excited to have her here. And also, I guess I should add that she is celebrating her 25th birthday today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is Gail Eckert. Thank you so much for joining us. Gail is it's a partner within Summit Search now, or am I wrong there?
No, director of recruitment. Yeah.
So I want to do that differently. Gail Eckert is with us, and she is with Summit Search Group. So thank you very much, Gail, for taking the time to join us today. There's a few reasons why I wanted you on the podcast and why I thought people would find a conversation with you very, very interesting. So I appreciate you giving me the time for this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate you asking, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and there's no points, there's no tests, so it's not a pass or a fail. We're all good. We'll be able to get through this. Part of the reason, of course, is that it's an International Women's Day, Monday, March 8th. Really, it's a celebration during the month, and it's a time, and it's not really one day, right? We talk about it as being one day where that gets the recognition, but it really is, it's every day of the year and something that has to be talked about. But I found it very interesting. This year's theme for International Women's Day is Women in Leadership and Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. And it talks about, celebrating the efforts of women and girls around the world and in shaping a more equal future from and recovery from the COVID pandemic, but also it highlights the gaps that remain in salary and position and such still today, which oddly I find incredible that we're still having that conversation in 2021. And I was talking to a friend the other day. We were just having a general discussion about Women's Day and about gaps and all of that, because I was talking about having you on the show. And I said, I looked back through a lot of the executive photos that I had taken while I was with Sun Media as a CEO. And I never realized, but we had either 50% of our team were women, or greater. But it wasn't because of that. It was because they were the best darn people for that position, and they did a great job. And really, that's you look back on it now and say the thought never even entered my mind. It was just, this is the person I trust can do the job, and I need to put in that role so that we can all be successful. And it's always worked out. I'm really proud of our team and where they've all gone. So I look forward to having this discussion with you. And it won't just be about women in leadership. We're going to talk a lot about everything. But just before we started recording the podcast, we did talk about the fact that today is your birthday, and it's historical, not just because it's your birthday.
Right.
There's a big deal happened on your birthday. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Well, as I was saying to you, and I say to a lot of people, that my birthday is historic for Winnipeg. It was the largest blizzard in the history of the city on March the 4th, 1966, which was my first birthday, which now lets you know how old I am. But anyways, it was, so every year on my birthday, it's really interesting because it becomes a weather discussion. That news around around Canada will concentrate on the March 4th blizzard of 1966. And so, but I did mention in our earlier call, probably about 10 or 12 years ago, it was one of the warmest days on March the 4th. And I had breakfast outside on a patio on Corden and had a terrible sunburn. And so I always think it's possible. Either it'll be plus 20 or it'll be, blizzard. So this year it looks pretty good. So I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, you should. Now, did your siblings make fun of you for that? That maybe, as you were young, they would refer to Gail as coming in like a lion?
No, they didn't. But I think I mentioned to you as well. So in my family, we all have our birthdays this week. So it is the festival. It is literally the birthday festival. And so I'm birthday number 2, and it goes until the 12th. So When the kids were younger, it was a lot of cake. So
It's either amazing luck or incredible planning on behalf of your parents.
yeah,
One or the other. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time today. Happy birthday again.
thank you.
But I want to talk about a couple of different things, and the first thing I want to talk about is your personal journey and
Mhm.
your success, because it's obviously, it's you don't just wake up one day and find yourself in the position that you're in.
Mhm.
You're filling executive roles and other positions within companies that are critical for
Mhm.
organizations, and organizations invest a lot of money to find the right person, and a lot of that pressure goes on to you. So I want to talk to you about your success and
Sure.
your journey along there, and figure, was it difficult for you climbing that ladder as a woman? Did that come into it? And how did you work through that?
Sure. Well, thank you. I started at 25 years in the newspaper industry, and I guess that's kind of how you and I did know one another, although we never worked
Hmm.
together. But
Yeah.
like many people, I experienced job loss, and that is kind of the transition point where I looked at what I was doing, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to, and I say to people that you have an opportunity to sort of reinvent yourself and to look at what you really like and what you're really good at, and make a determination about what is really next for me. And I wasn't really sure what that was. And I had a lot of opportunity to leave the city. And I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to leave Manitoba or Winnipeg. I could have easily have done that. And I had opportunities to do it. But, in discussion with my family, we decided that, really this was, I had kids in school and, I mean, it was just, own a house. It wasn't as simple as just picking up and going somewhere else. So it's kind of an interesting story because I went for lunch with a friend who happened to be an executive search practice leader at a firm in the city, and we went for lunch. And I remember him saying to me, Gail, instead of me helping you find your next great opportunity, I really want you to build something with me, and I want you to join me in my firm. And I remember thinking afterwards, like, I'm not an HR person, and I don't really know about human resources. And I was told really clearly that the job really isn't about that. It's about business relationships and intuition and sales, actually. And so a lot of what I really love to do, I get to do every day. Like, it's fantastic. But I remember coming home and saying to my family, well, guess what? I am now an executive recruiter. So I had mixed feedback because, obviously we hadn't really discussed like what would that look like. But honestly, that was, I want to say 12, 13, 14 years ago now. And, my job, I have the best job because I get to do all the things that I really love, and I get to help businesses really grow and, really find the best people for the jobs. And I get to see them really grow and flourish like in different organizations. And, it's kind of interesting because I get to work on a lot of very unique positions and things, honestly, that I and maybe didn't know anything about when I was, first kind of approached. But I get to learn a little bit about a lot of things, and that's what makes my job really rewarding. And so, I wouldn't change it, for the world. And, on my birthday, people will say, so what's happening? Are you going to retire? Like, what's going on? And I have zero interest in that. Like, I think that, what I do, I just absolutely love it. Like, it's a great job. So that's where I got today.
What a great story. What I mean, when you think about that, losing your job, your career, and something that you had worked hard at for many years, that does happen to a lot of us now. We
Yeah.
face those challenges. Um, what hurdles did you have to overcome that you recall that were very difficult?
Well, honestly, and I tell people this, I was telling someone this yesterday, like, experiencing job loss is an extremely humbling time. And in the newspaper industry, like, I think I thrived and I performed extremely well. And I was sort of at the top, and I saw sort of what my next steps would be. And we can talk about why those steps didn't actually unfold. But um, I, uh, I learned pretty fast that that it's extremely humbling when you've lost your job and you have a hard time finding. And so I feel that in my current position, I have that understanding of what it feels like. And I did quickly realize that, like, in my mind, clearly I'm amazing. So I could not figure out why I just couldn't pull together the job offers or the opportunities that I was looking for. And so, it is, you do have to take a step back and be forgiving of yourself as you're working through the process, and know and reach out to people that have your back and make you feel like you can do anything. And so it was a huge learning experience for me. And I take that knowledge through every person I interview, because I actually know what it's like to have experienced that.
Very, very good advice. And I think that's an incredible quality to be able to take to somebody who's looking, because you are listening with a different ear. What do you tell people, though, that have left the private sector for a long period of time, whether to focus on their children, focus on education, or focus on their own business, and they're
Mhm.
wanting to get back into a more structured organization? And as you start that interview process, I think it can be really challenging because it's scary.
Mhm.
There's a lot of anxiety, and if you have a couple of interviews and you don't get offers from the first or second interview, how do you help people deal with that? Because
Mhm.
I mean, that sets people back, and I understand that. There's been
Totally.
jobs in the private sector I wanted, and I thought, oh, I nailed that.
I
Oh,
know.
I was wrong.
I know. It's really challenging. And so sometimes people, I think people are pretty hard on themselves, and should be more forgiving and understanding and open about what these employment gaps might be, or were you starting a business? Were you raising a family? Was it COVID? And I think that when I talk to people, I never make assumptions. I'll look at a resume, or I'll talk to a candidate and I'll say, just explain to me what what were you doing during this period of time. And so often those conversations, they unfold, something that they had experienced during that time, caring for an elderly parent. This is a big one right now. A lot of people my age, your age, have had to take a gap time from their employment to look after somebody. And so, I think employers understand that. And as businesses have sort of evolved when it comes to, we're going to talk about Women's Week, Women's Day, gender equality, that kind of thing. I think that companies, are willing to have these conversations. I know in my own job search, I had worked for the same company for like 17 years. Sometimes that's not a great thing. And I found that it was the question that no one wanted to ask me. That, were people like not wanting to hire me, or was I no good, or was I not good enough to leave, or was I complacent? And so sometimes, when I was interviewing, that I realized pretty early on that that was a challenge for me. And so I felt that, when I was interviewing, the best thing for me to do was to broach the subject, because it was the white elephant in the room and no one wanted to ask me. And so, I opened up with, you might notice that I have been in this position, or not same position, but this organization for, 15, 16 years or whatever it was. And I want to talk to you about that and what I accomplished during that time. So I think that people should be comfortable to talk about, things that might be perceived as challenges, like an employment gap.
It's really interesting because when I was getting into the publishing world and on the executive side, I had the good fortune of working for Ken Thompson,
Mhm.
whose son David Thompson has a big interest in True North,
Mhm.
and in the Winnipeg Jets. And I remember I was being moved to a lot of different markets at times to go into operations and review and analyze and then reorganize. And you'd be there for 2 years or a year sometimes, and then off to a different market. And I always had some people that would say to me, "Oh, it's like you can't stay in one place for a long time." And I had that conversation saying, "I think this is hurting my future." And
Mhm.
his comment was, and I remember it because it made so much sense to me. He said, "Staying in the same place for 20 years is only 1 year experience. Like you're in the same spot."
Yeah.
You
Right.
need to expand and look at and work in different places so you're facing, because every different market in every city, every jurisdiction, different challenges, more experience. He goes, so be open to it. Don't look at it as it's hurting you. It's a
Mhm.
growth.
It
Every
is.
change is growth, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's
I
hard.
had one person say to me one time years ago, you have to move out to move up. That sometimes you need to move to something else to gain experience and bring that back. And so a lot of clients I work with are willing to hire back people that have left, if they've left on good terms for growth opportunities, that they know that those individuals are bringing back best practices from other companies. And so that's important. Yeah. But also, if you have a long period of employment with the same company, if it shows progression, that you've taken on new challenges, you've taken on new responsibilities, I mean, that's really a positive as well. But it's still the same workplace culture, right? So can you adapt, will be a question. And so people need to be willing to kind of address that and be proactive in addressing it. So
So you had mentioned the fact that you do recruiting for executives, and I know that some of the organizations that you've recruited for are very impressive. And being International Women's Day, and really this, just let's put that aside and just talk about the gap today. How would you compare that gap today to, let's say, the last 5 years or maybe 10 years? Is it improving?
well, I absolutely think it is improving. If I go back to the early part of my recruiting career, I had opportunities that, I would go and meet with clients, and in no uncertain terms was it, implied to me or outright stated to me that they wanted to hire a young and pretty girl, right? And I remember the first time that I heard that, and just to add some personal context to this, like I have raised three incredibly smart young women that are all have master's degrees. I mean, they're smart people. And so, I remember, getting this question posed to me or statement made by this client, and I was absolutely dumbfounded. Like I thought, this can't possibly exist. You can't actually be saying this. And so in this conversation, this individual kept repeating, describing the physical attributes of this young woman that they wanted to hire. And like it was a horrible feeling. And I remember I clearly said to this person, so then are you saying that you wouldn't hire me for this job? And he went, well, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I said, well, no, that is what you're saying. You're saying that you want to hire like, a young, the way he described it, a young, attractive individual. So, did those conversations happen? Did I clearly state that my role is to find the best person, the best qualified person for the role, regardless of their gender, or age? Ageism is a big, stumbling block as well in the hiring process. And so, I think that it certainly did exist. Going back even five or so years ago, it was never stated, but it was implied that, young women, they're potentially going to go and have a baby. And, how will that impact my company if I hire someone and a year from now they're gone? So, but I have to say, going to today in 2021, I honestly feel that I'm really fortunate that the clients that I work with, I really feel that we're partners. And the ones that I work with are ones that, we have the same kind of core values. And that's really important to me is organizations that want to hire the best and they want to bring in the top talent that they can for their organization, regardless of gender. And I think too that companies are really, with the Me Too movement and everything that's happening in the world, there's more awareness to gender parity in everything that we do and in the workplace. So it still exists, sure. I'm fortunate that I don't really deal with that because my clients trust me to bring them the best. And so, I am very careful, to use gender inclusive pronouns. That I'm not, you want to make sure that you're presenting candidates without any unconscious bias. So I'm careful about some of that. I'm more aware of that now. I've had to sort of be more aware of just my language when I'm presenting candidates as well. So
It's unfortunate to think that we still have people though in leadership roles that, and it sounds like there's only a few times that it's happened to you, that obviously they should be looking for the best person. Why wouldn't you want the best person in that position,
Yeah.
regardless of race, color, orientation, anything? It's
Right.
just you want the best person, and you want somebody that can excel and that fits in, and will help the culture of your organization.
Hmm.
What do you say? I mean, and like you, I have two incredibly intelligent stepdaughters. They're my daughters, but stepdaughters, and I have my daughter speaks four different languages.
Hmm.
So when she's mad at me, I have no idea what she's saying because she'll pick a language, but I know when she speaks in a different language, she's mad at me. Um, but and I sit back and I think they've achieved way more in life than I have,
Oh, 100.
because they're committed, they're passionate, they're smart, they're focused, and I don't look at them as they've gone into their own careers, they made those choices, they decided what they wanted, they had their eyes on a prize, and they're working towards that. And for me to hear something like, oh, we want to hire, when you said somebody
Hmm.
had actually mentioned they wanted to hire somebody young and attractive, and even as a former executive, I don't get it, because that makes absolutely no sense, and maybe that person shouldn't be in that job, they should be
Yeah.
replacing that person. But
But well, I was just
go
going to
ahead.
say, in the people that I interview, and we're speaking of women, so I'll reference women, but you know, they share stories with me of what they experience in their workplaces, and I find it really troubling. Like it is, and you're right. I mean, this is 2021. The fact that we're having these conversations still is absurd. And I mean, I've raised kids to believe that they can do absolutely anything. And and they have, and so I'm really proud of that. But when I have people that regardless of their age, but women that have told me how they've been treated differently in the workplace and how they didn't have the same opportunities. And going back to the newspaper industry, I think I had the same opportunities, but it was a man's world. I mean, it really was. And you had an expectation to be better and perform better, and just so many things I can look back at that in my career that would have been done differently had I been a man. And I do have some bitterness about some of that. Can't carry it with you, but I've learned from it, and yeah, it's these sort of storytelling moments is how I kind of share, when you talk about your journey, share it with other people so that they can grow as well.
It's interesting, and I agree with you. I think the newspaper media industry in general has struggled with that for how they dealt with things in the past, or how they ran their organizations has always been, and you look at it today, has been questionable. But let's look at the result, right? I mean, when I left as the CEO, one of the people will ask me, why do you think newspapers have fallen so much? And I will always say, well, they never really considered the future. They were so focused on
Right.
the past and when an organization is focused on the past, you can't move forward.
Mm.
You start losing all your revenues, you lose all your customers, and eventually you're done. And that's where a lot of them are today. My biggest my best joke on it is, I always say, I enjoyed being in a boardroom looking around and listening to the very top of your organization, the board of directors, saying the internet's a fad, and it will
Yeah.
go away. So that, I mean, there you go. That explains it. What do you say to companies like at the city of Winnipeg, for example? They're making it a point to put in their search, or when they're talking about searching, that they want to make sure that they hire a female. That's important to them, and race is important to them, and they're really trying to pick somebody for that position based on those qualifications or those
Mm.
attributes. Is that fair to do? And not to in a generalized comment, but is that fair to do to the candidate? Because does that mean the person coming into that position is going to be looked at, especially in a very senior executive role, very differently?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So Summit Search Group has recently become a member of an organization called the 30% Club. And, I knew a little bit about it, but, I've had, over the last number of, weeks, I think we've been a member for a few months now, looked a little bit more to their mandate. And it is a campaign that's led by CEOs and directors, leaders around the globe to ensure that executive board and executive roles across the world are filled by women. But the fact that, like, it's a great campaign, but it still surprises me that there needs to be a campaign and it's only 30%. Like, it's just, I was discussing this with someone the other day, and it was like, but it's only 30, like they're trying to hit 30%. So, the fact that, we do need to change the I guess, mandate and be more inclusive of everybody in the hiring process. And, people, of all backgrounds, or gender, or, people that have, disability, et cetera. I mean, people should disclose, and self-declare, because, it would give them, I'm not saying a greater opportunity, but, a lot of organizations want to be inclusive. It should be, that's the way it should be. So, is it fair to have someone walk into a role and feel that perhaps others are looking at them, that they only got the job because they're a woman? I'm hoping that's not the case, but, so I'm not really sure the answer to that. That's a conversation that, we could go around and around for hours on. But I think that, it's unfortunate that it's a topic of conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I asked that question, because I think that's actually a sad state that we seem to be in as a society. Like, it shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter when if a woman gets that position and it's an executive position. What does that have to do with it?
Yeah.
That is the best person for the job. This is the person we know is going to make a difference, and this is a person. We're all people. And this is who we've hired. And I don't know, I've always thought of that from a different perspective, because you hear from some people, you hear from I talk to a lot of young hockey officials that are trying to get into the job market and stuff. And they feel now all of it, that they have less of a chance if they're, because they're male, getting into certain fields or applying for certain positions and stuff. And I always kind of say to them, like, it's in your head. Be the best person for the job, and that's how you get that job.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. I mean, I think that, organizations, I mean, they want to hire the right people, the best people. So, I mean, that's in my role, that's how I guide the clients that I work with, is to, really look at the best individual for the job. But, I think where there's some challenges too is that, in, young women, or women in general, there's an expectation to conform to the way that men do things. And I think that is, when we talked earlier about, advice to give to young women, I mean, be like, embrace the qualifications and the qualities that you have, bring to the table, like, your compassion and your insight, as a woman, and don't try to be like the boys. And I think that is a really important thing for people to know, but companies need to be better. I mean, companies need to have more gender inclusive, social events and things like that. I mean, going out and drinking beer after work, and, when someone might have kids at home, to take care of, going out to, like, very male oriented, social club activities, are you going to go, shoot pool and play golf, to, like, I don't know. I mean, is that inclusive for everyone? I'm not sure. And even when you think of different people's, cultures, or some of these activities, inclusive of everyone. So, I think even in my career, honestly, like, you would go out and you would be expected to keep up with everybody else. Regardless if you had kids, you got to get to bed. And I can share, that there were times that I, should have been home, and I was out because it was an expectation for me to keep up. And so, that's hopefully changing. But you know what? I hear stories every day that it's not really changing in some ways.
That's the most unfortunate, part of all this is, I would hope we've advanced enough. And I always think when you have to have the discussions to get change. but it also, to me, it's like it creates more and more division and people talking one side or taking another side. And it's like, can't we, like haven't we had this discussion long enough?
I know.
Let's move on
Mhm.
and understand we're all equal. We all understand that. I mean, I would not challenge one of my daughters intellectually at all,
Oh, I
because
agree.
I respect the fact that they know what they're talking about, and I pass it over. That's their thing, unless we're having an argument about a hockey call. Because being a referee, I like to be right all the time.
Right.
But I mean, I turn to them for that. But anyways, and speaking of young people, I wanted to talk to you here in the last little bit that we have about young people leaving, and it can't be
Mhm.
disputed. A lot of our young, talented, creative people are leaving the city. I know friends of my kids; they've all left. My son is one son's in BC, one's in Alberta now. He went for educational reasons, and then got
Right.
a little CFL time. But you know what what is it? What is that doing to us to see this many young people kind of leaving the city to find greener pastures?
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting thing because I think that fewer people are leaving than we might think. I think if we went back a number of years ago when, Alberta was booming and people were leaving for money and opportunity and the grass is, being greener somewhere else. I think as Winnipeggers, we're sometimes our own worst enemy, as we all joke about. We're very self-deprecating. It's too cold, it's too flat, it's too, but I think that you're right. I mean, young people have left for education. Young people have left for, the glamour of some of the larger, more, say, quote unquote, cosmopolitan cities to do different things. But honestly, like I see them coming back now. And my daughter, Catherine, said to me yesterday that she felt that Manitoba, and I'm going to totally mess this up, but I think she said Manitoba was like the largest elastic band because people would go out but they eventually come back. And I see that as a recruiter and attracting people to the province. And I have to do this all the time, right? You have to sell Winnipeg, sell Manitoba. And it's you have to find the reasons that you want to promote to bring them back. And people that have left, young people that have left, are coming back because it's affordable. We have a great culture here in the province. We've got amazing restaurants, we've got wonderful festivals. So a lot of the things that they've maybe left originally to do in other cities, that they're coming back. And there is a lot happening in terms of innovation in our province. And so where I think maybe some people had left, to look for opportunities elsewhere, that they're starting to see some of these jobs here now that are maybe of more interest or, more kind of cutting edge innovation that's kind of it's bringing more attention, to the province. And they can afford to buy a house here, and that's huge. And so, when I'm recruiting for a position in Manitoba, one of the first questions I want to know is, like, do you have roots here? Like, tell me about, have you been to Winnipeg? Do your parents live here? And so, people aren't just going to move here because of the Winnipeg Jets, although that was, for a period of time, it did work. But, I think it's less than it used to be. I think it's moving in the right direction.
So I like the fact that you said you have to sell Winnipeg
Yes, absolutely.
when you're recruiting for here. What are some of the things, and you talked about some of the things you'll use to sell Winnipeg. What are some of the things that you hear from individuals that haven't been to Winnipeg? Because I agree, I think you leave Winnipeg, you ultimately come back. It's
Mhm.
and I don't mind if young people. In fact, with the kids, I would like them to go be somewhere else for a little while and come back
Mhm.
because
Sure.
that's more experience for them. It's life experience. It's when you're young, you got to take advantage of it because when you get to our age, it's just difficult getting up the stairs, other than moving around. But
The birthday jab.
yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But what is it that you hear from candidates that makes them think twice about coming to Winnipeg or Manitoba?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to dispute the weather. I mean, people love to complain about the weather, complain about the mosquitoes. Of course, I have arsenal of responses about it's a dry cold and the sky is always blue and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, there isn't a place that you could live that you can drive less than an hour to be on a beach. I mean, you can afford a house. You can have a lifestyle that you might not otherwise, be able to enjoy. We have, great educational, educational schools and colleges here in Winnipeg and Manitoba. But the complaints from not complaints, but the comments from people that are maybe a little bit hesitant, really a lot of it has to do with the weather. It does I have to be honest that during our height of COVID, it was not easy. We were in the news for some tough numbers, and so it was tough getting people to consider moving to Manitoba during that time. And so, I know it's across Canada, everyone's experiencing challenges, but for a period of time, it was difficult. But, I think candidates are really willing to talk about what it is that we have to offer here. And, a lot of people, like their families can have a really wonderful life. So, it's not as hard as maybe I make it out to be, but it's, you have to sell it for sure.
Why are we all farmers? Like, everyone complains about the weather. It's the same. I mean, Canada gets winter. It doesn't matter where you go. We all get winter. Well, I guess, maybe Vancouver or the coast, and you get it in a different way. But I mean, we have minus 30, 35, but it's not like for 7 months out of the year.
Oh, I know. No, honestly, I have to say, even for myself, weather is like my favorite topic. I talk about weather all the time to people. It's a good icebreaker, And so I talk to candidates and clients, all over Canada. So it's a common ground where people have something that can broach a conversation, get it started. But no, I think that I don't know. Weather just is this commonplace for everyone, and we like to, complain about it, and we like to celebrate it. So,
So on the final point, a lot of people took a hit during COVID-19. A lot of positions were lost. A lot of them have decided to reevaluate whether or not they're in the right position. What advice do you give to those people that may be without work right now? That are hoping to go back, but the potential's not great, or those that have gone through this process now and think, what, I need to change my direction or my career. More focusing on, I really want to focus on those people that may have been impacted the worst and lost their career or lost their income during this time. How do we help them or motivate them to and what do they do to get back into that workforce?
It's been really challenging. I've talked to a lot of people that are afraid, a lot of people that have been either they're currently maybe underemployed or they've lost their employment entirely. I feel very optimistic though right now. The clients that I'm talking to that had downsized teams and people, I think some have had the opportunity to reevaluate how best that they can, kind of build their company post-COVID. So some of those roles have changed and some won't be replaced. But I think what I'd say to the people is, and it's easy to say, be patient, because I think everyone's been really patient. But, I think you need to, you need to find someone that to be your champion, whether it's a colleague or a friend or, someone that will, keep you going, and having the faith to know that you have the skills and the background. And unfortunately, it's taking time and it's scary. I mean, it's really scary for people. And I've talked to people that are feeling quite desperate. And I think if you step back and you continue to try to, be focused and, do the right things, do the right activities, contact the right people, spend time on your own personal development, take some classes, do some, like the question everyone jokes about, the top interview question for 2021 or beyond will be, how did you spend your time during COVID? Like, what did you learn about yourself and what did you do? But I think that that's an interesting thing. And I try to be, very supportive of people's emotional states. And, it's going to be really difficult, but I see jobs are coming back, and, maybe your don't discount your abilities, and know that the position will be there, and maybe it'll be a little less money. But you can kind of get back to where you were and find things that you're excited about. And it's easy to say, like, don't discount yourself and take something because you need a job. And I think that we're going to see a little bit of kind of bumps in employment with small little bits after this all ends, because people have taken things that maybe wasn't their dream job, but they needed employment. So I think companies need to be aware of that and forgiving of that as well. So.
Very good advice. Anything that I missed that you would say about anything?
I don't know. It's a really interesting time. The job market, for those who are looking for work right now, it's good. Like, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of interesting work happening. And I think that that's a real positive thing. What I always would say to people is, don't take your eye off the ball. I mean, a lot people make assumptions about, hiring and, when things might be, hot or not hot, and different times of the year, like Christmas or July and things like that. Those are times that companies they're still hiring. And so, having that period in your mind where you're going to maybe take the summer off and go golfing, I wouldn't recommend that. Like, I would really recommend that you focus on your job search, focus on the activities every day to make sure that you're connecting with the right people and that you're remaining positive. And, and everything we're talking about, mental health and all the things that are really important, that we, get outside and do some things that make you feel good, self-care, that type of thing. It's really important because, for some people, unfortunately, this is going to be it could theoretically be a long period. And so they need to, stay well, stay healthy. So that's really important.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a question I had thought of a while ago. Is this a good time in the job market? And you addressed that. Thank you, Gail. Thank you very much for this conversation. It was very enlightening. And as always, and I probably don't say it, I've always appreciated the conversations we have and advice on matters and just the opportunity to talk about things. We've talked about careers in the past and various conversations. So that I really appreciate that. And it's amazing to watch how you've grown in that career. You came out of the one industry and into an entirely different industry, and it can be done, and it can be done with
it sure can. And
with
that's
grace
the takeaway.
And much success.
Yeah, that's the takeaway, is that, anyone can look at where they are today, and they can reevaluate, and they can change the direction of their career path. And, it's exhilarating. It's terrifying, but it's an exhilarating and extremely rewarding time. So that would be my takeaway.
Thank you so much for your time, especially on your birthday, and happy birthday.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Enjoy the rest of your day. I really appreciate it.